Welcome to the Freedom Report.
What I love about Austin Peterson is his love of the battle. He wants to fight.
Austin was, of course, the rabble-rouser, just to make sure I stayed Rothbardian.
We live in a world fraught with danger, and there is a certain amount of danger that the public must endure in order to secure the blessings of liberty.
For economic freedom and personal liberty. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Austin Peterson here. Welcome to a special live edition of the Freedom Report podcast. Today is Monday, November the 26th. Thank you so much for joining me, and thank you to all who are in here as part of the live stream. We're going to have a fun discussion today. If you're listening to the Freedom Report podcast later, just so you know, this podcast was recorded live on Facebook. So if you're listening to me on Facebook right now, people like Squiggly Line Guy, Joe Trotter, Liz Fanning Press, Nicholas Vieser, Amber Warner, Charles Plesser, Justin Gillespie, and all the others, well, then you got to hear it first before anybody else. So if you like to be able to get my podcast when I do it live, which is about once a week, then don't forget to follow me on Facebook. It's just AP for Liberty. And if you type in AP for Liberty on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, pretty much everywhere and anywhere, you're going to find me. So there's going to be some audience interaction today. I'll be reading some of the comments that I'll be getting from our live viewers. And thank you so much for participating. Nice to see you. So before we get into this topic, before we get into the interactive portion of this live stream, I'm going to read to you a little bit of the history of this story. And obviously this story caused an enormous stir amongst the libertarian community over the last couple of days. And it's funny, a lot of people were very angry when I shared a story written by our favorite online troll, Squiggly Line Guy. So thank you so much to Squigs for driving a hell of a ton of traffic to the Libertarian Republic. I say he drove a ton of traffic to the website, but to be honest, it was really the haters, the angry libertarians who were very upset because they were confirming their biases and engaging in all kinds of dickery online. So just so you know, this is a not safe for work podcast. Again, if you're listening to this later, you might want to not listen to this openly at work. If you're listening to it live, yeah, definitely don't listen to this live at work. Not a good time for you to be listening. So there's going to be some bad words being said, and we're going to be talking about some topics that are not safe for work. So before we get into this topic and I read some of the interesting comments that I got from the libertarian movement yesterday, and we discussed this, then let me just go ahead and give you a little background. This is from news.com in Australia. Online sex workers have slammed a viral campaign by right-wing, quote, incels and men's rights activists to mass report them to tax authorities for allegedly failing to declare income. The hashtag Thought Audit, which appears to have been started by a Facebook user calling themselves David Wu, began to trend on Sunday after being promoted by controversial pickup artist and, quote, legal rape advocate Dariush Rush Valizadeh. Now, if that wasn't a loaded intro to an article, I've never seen one before. First of all, let me give you a little bit of background. So if you're wondering what an incel is a slang word for what is known as an involuntary celibate. An involuntary celibate, if you've never heard it before, is defined as someone who would like to be with the ladies or the gents or what have you, but they just can't close the deal. So they are involuntarily celibate. So let's get that out of the way. And then, of course, what is a thought? That thought is an abbreviation, THOT, also known as an abbreviation for what they say is that hoe over there, a thought. So hashtag Thought Audit means that these hoes over there are being audited. All right. Mr. Valizadeh tweeted, online thoughts are finding out that all income generated from their breasts and vagine is taxable, he says. Men are aggressively organizing to report all thoughts. I don't blame them. These girls are getting a free ride via beta bucks and a broken sexual marketplace that is rigged in the favor of females. Now, what is a beta bucks? I'll have to keep defining this stuff for you. A beta is considered to be a male who is not an alpha. It's considered to be a man who is weak, effete, effeminate, perhaps, someone. That's what's known as he's calling a beta. And when he says beta bucks, he's talking about men who can't get women otherwise, or weak males are having to spend their money. generally, and he's saying many of these girls are getting a free ride via Beta Bucks. These are not my words. I'm reading to you from an article, okay? I haven't given my opinion yet. So he added that under the IRS's policy, a whistleblower could receive up to 30% of the tax collected. He says there's actually a financial incentive to defeat thoughterry, he wrote. Thought's an online slang term, meaning that hoe over there, just like I said. One poster on the 4chan image board wrote that it now stood for that hoe owes tax. Online cam girls reported being targeted for their premium Snapchat and Instagram services exchanging nude photos for payment. PSA to any of my friends who run premium Snapchats. There's a wave of guys reporting them to the IRS. Oh my lord. For tax fraud and the like, one Twitter user wrote, "Please be careful. I know sex work is hard enough." Another wrote, "With all these men harassing us, stalking us, snitching to our families, and reporting us to the cops and the IRS, I'm wondering when sex workers are going to snap and take these efforts out when we finally have nothing more to lose." Oh, scary. Online model Suze Ellis said a bunch of men on Twitter are mad because they believe they're entitled to free nudes, so they're reporting sex workers' Snapchat incomes to the IRS for audits. I don't know that anybody feels entitled to free nudes because, of course, you can always find free pornography on the internet, which makes me wonder, why are people paying for premium Snapchat accounts? It doesn't quite make sense because that stuff is free. So they go on. Jared Holt from the website Right Wing Watch tweeted that while the hashtag started as a joke, quote, "Of course the incels and angry young men of the world are picking it up for their own devices." Like most of what these guys normally do, this channels their deep-seated frustration that they don't get the girlfriend they think they're owed into random outbursts at random women who dare use the internet, he wrote. Vice contributor Jules Suzdaltsev said the same people, quote, "who think Trump is a genius for hiding his tax returns are desperately reporting cam girls to the IRS for allegedly not paying enough in taxes. Maybe it's more about hating women and not actually hating taxes," as he said. Right? One viral tweet was criticized for potentially giving misleading advice. Quote, "Someone said, you do not have to pay taxes in the U.S. Until you make more than $20,000 a year," the online streamer wrote. "Don't worry about incels reporting the IRS because they actually can't do anything without digital proof of your income." She suggested payments through PayPal were considered a donation, and the IRS, quote, "can't do anything." But video game journalist Oliver Campbell said the posts, quote, "were 100% incorrect and will get you in trouble with the IRS." Another cam girl also hit out, urging the woman to delete this false tweet. "Here's correct information. You have to file taxes when you earn $400 a year," she wrote, noting online sex workers were classified as independent contractors. And by the way, if you work for yourself, you have to pay a self-employment tax here in the United States, as I know very well, which sucks. Certified public accountant Kenneth Hester chimed in saying, "Yes, this is statutory taxable income, but that in order to receive the reward, the whistleblower is required to provide the taxpayer's social security number to the IRS." Well, that's very interesting. And so, you know, now as you have seen, this is a little, you've got the background on this story, everyone. So if you have questions in the chat, don't feel free to drop them down. For doing so. And so let's discuss this for just a few minutes, because I wanted to read to you some of I want to get into the responses to the article that Squiggly Line Guy wrote on, the people wrote to the article that Squiggly Line Guy wrote on Facebook. And man, people were really upset. They were upset that I shared the article. Most of the people didn't read the headline. But let me just give my opinion on this. And then let me ask you guys a question. And see if I can get some answers from people on the thing. So, is it wrong to report sex workers to the IRS? I think the answer is yes. It's always a dick move to report someone to the IRS. Now, there's a difference between believing that it's wrong to report sex workers to the IRS and still finding it funny. And a lot of libertarians were very angry that I found this topic funny, and they wondered, well, Austin, this is against your principles. Why is it funny? Well, because let me ask you all a question in the chat. And I'm actually curious for what are your thoughts on this, the thoughts on the thoughts here. But is it wrong to report a communist to the IRS? So, like generally we as libertarians, we say deliberative taxation is theft, but what if you have someone, let's say one of these sex workers is an open Marxist. Let's say this is a person who not only do they vote to take away your money via taxes, meaning that they actually go out and vote, but let's say that one of these sex workers actually believes that, that the government should take 90% of our tax dollars. So this person is going out and saying, hey, you should pay more in taxes. But then if that person gets reported to the IRS, that's what the concept, that's a concept called irony. And I feel bad that I have to explain this to libertarians because, I think sometimes part of the problem is that so many of the people in our movement, like we must be on the spectrum, like libertarianism must be on the spectrum, because I think so many of us are incapable of recognizing something like irony or satire. Because that's why this is funny. It's not funny that people are being gone after by one of the most oppressive institutions in the entire world, the IRS. What's funny is when someone who believes that we should all be taxed at 90% of our income get reported to the IRS. That's comedy. So yeah, so that's the question. My question to you is, do you think that it is funny if a sex worker was a leftist or a Marxist? Do you think is it funny that someone would have something like that come around? What if Bernie Sanders didn't report his income to the IRS? What if Bernie Sanders, who wants us all to pay a massive income tax, wasn't paying the amount of taxes that he owed, right? Would it be terrible for the IRS to go after him? Yeah, because I still think, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. But would it be funny? Absolutely, it would be funny. So I had to clarify because so many people were like, Austin, I'm unfollowing you because you're not a libertarian. Again, so many people can't take a joke. So I had to write a caveat because, some people in the libertarian movement, I think, just don't quite understand the concept of satire and irony and humor. I said, since so many of you can't read past a headline, which some of you actually stated you didn't read past the headline in the comments, you should note that I don't support reporting anyone to the IRS. I also think prostitution should be legal. Also, if you can't take a joke, get out. So here's the funny thing, because really, if you're talking about sex work, if you don't want sex workers to have to pay taxes, then you don't want to legalize sex work, right? So then I misspoke because the top comment on this Facebook post is that I think prostitution should be legal. But when you're saying that something should be legal, in essence, you're sort of saying that it should be taxed. So really what we should be saying as libertarians, if we think sex work should not be prosecuted and they shouldn't have to pay taxes and that nobody should have to pay taxes because taxation is theft, then don't say legalize sex work, right? Don't say, sex work is work like on the picture of the profile that you're looking at right now. But the question is if you legalize something, are you asking for it to be taxed? It's like marijuana. Right? Like before we passed medical marijuana in Missouri, if you sold medical marijuana in Missouri, you were a drug dealer, right? And you weren't paying taxes. So once we legalize medical cannabis, we get a tax rate. So essentially, it's really about decriminalization if you don't want taxes. So there's a lot of really interesting sort of, juxtapositions of positions that you could take on this issue, because really, in essence, as libertarians, we think that sex work should not be prosecuted, and we also don't want people to pay taxes to feed the beast, to feed big government and Leviathan. So I think it's definitely wrong in there for someone to be reported to the IRS, but it can be funny. Yes, I actually, I openly admit that I engage in Schadenfreude. I think that Schadenfreude is funny. So when I watch, it's like that, you ever see that movie Idiocracy where they had a show on there? It was called Oof My Balls. It was like Ow My Balls. And people were it was just a show that people watch all the time where they're getting kicked in the nuts. Well, that's what America's Funniest Home Videos was. So if you ever laugh at videos, America's Funniest Home Videos, where like a toddler gets mowed over by a dog, like a giant dog, like runs over a toddler and they get knocked on their butt, that's Schadenfreude. So if a Marxist feminist is out there being a sex worker and they say we should all be taxed at 90%, and then some online troll comes around and says that he's reporting them all to the IRS, that's called irony. That's called Schadenfreude. It may be wrong, but it's still funny. It may be wrong for me to laugh at the America's Funniest Home Videos, Ow My Balls videos. It may be wrong for me to laugh at fail army videos on YouTube, but I do it anyway. because sometimes it's okay to laugh. And this is probably one of the bigger problems that we have in the libertarian movement, is really and I actually think it's a trait of the left. Have you ever heard the squiggly line guy say that the left can't meme, right? Well, the reason why that the left can't meme, and people like Sherwin Loyola in the comments who say, you've been drinking too much of that status GOP Kool-Aid, even though I've just said, like, I'm literally telling you right now, I don't think that it's right to report these people to the IRS. Like, this is a person who cannot, even when they are listening to something, they cannot comprehend the plain words of what you're saying. There's a difference between a principle of something and comedy, right? How many libertarian comedians are there? There's like 2. There's like Doug Stanhope and, maybe Penn Jillette probably would be one of the most well-known. But we can't take a joke. And that's illustrated by some of these comments. Listen to these comments. Brandon Susich says, reporting anybody to the IRS is a snitch-ass move. I don't care who it is. That's a no-no. Totally agree. But what if it's Bernie Sanders? Is it wrong if Bernie Sanders wasn't paying his taxes, but he demanded that the rest of us pay taxes, would it be wrong to report Bernie Sanders to the IRS because he wants to stick it on the rest of it? I mean, it's a good question, right? Think about that. Be able to play devil's advocate, guys. Think about it. If you can't play devil's advocate with yourselves, guys, like seriously, you might have one of the biggest things that they say that people who suffer from mental illness is they lack a sense of humor. Right, they're humorless. They don't, and that's because it requires empathy, which is one of the things that we libertarians really struggle with. And then, of course, somebody says, let me get down to these comments. These are really funny. Somebody says, I wouldn't even report Hillary to the IRS. Okay, yeah, I probably wouldn't either. You say you don't support or recognize the validity of an organization just to turn around and use it to snitch on people you don't like. Austin Peterson, spelled S-O-N. Are you sure you're not just a conservative? Well, I don't know. Is being mentally ill a requirement to be a libertarian? Being a humorless pedant? Is that a requirement to be a libertarian? Because if being a humorless pedant is a requirement to be a libertarian, well then definitely no. I am not a humorless pedant. And one of the funniest ones that Squiggly Line Guy actually dropped in there is this really like nerdy guy where he says, the incel is really going to use the IRS to imprison low-rent prostitutes. This will bring you no closer to getting the P word, you must realize. Very funny. Thank you, Squiggly Line Guy, for sharing that. And then Kyle Miner says, what? So incredibly disappointed in you, Austin. Do you even know what the word liberty, capital L, liberty, even means? Are we talking about liberty like the town in Missouri? Sorry, capitalization works. Grammar Nazis. If this is the kind of activity you support, don't bother running for anything again. If you want to explain your thoughts on this post, please do. But look up the word liberty in the dictionary first. Well, since you're talking about looking up the word dictionary, you're saying look up the word liberty in the dictionary, but you capitalize the word liberty, Kyle Miner, you ignorant twat. The word liberty in the dictionary with a capital L is the state of, or the city of Liberty, which is here in Missouri. So if I were to look up capital L Liberty in the dictionary, I would probably find a picture of the town of Liberty. And then I had to say, if you try to explain a joke, then it's not funny. Yeah, do you understand? Like, that's the thing is when people are like, Austin, explain yourselves, it's funny. But if I have to explain to you why it's funny, if I have to explain to you things like satire and irony and comedy, then that kills the joke. So if you can't take a joke, I mean, I can't explain humor to people who don't understand. And then, of course, Sally Hoffman says, what's the but? Right? Because I said, here's what I posted when I posted the article. I said, well, I'm against the taxes, but ... And I left it there. And everybody's like, but there's no but, there's no but, there's no but. Well, what could I have possibly said after that? Well, I could have said, well, I'm against the taxes, but ... This is funny. There's a lot of things you could fill it. And I'd left it like that because I knew that so many people were going to confirm their biases and put onto me what they wanted to hear or what they wanted to see. And sure enough, they did. What do you mean, but? And here's what I said when she asked, what's the but? I said, the but is enjoying watching people confirm their biases and getting a good laugh out of cognitive dissonance and willful ignorance, as well as feigned outrage, white knighting, and general virtue signaling. Right. There is no but in this, Austin. Principles and such. Christina Herrera almost got it. She got it real close. She says, I think he's being sarcastic, like, I support the NAP, but, as that's often heard in libertarian circles, well, I hate taxes, but my roads. She says she could be wrong. No, you're right, Christina. It was all sarcasm. Now, Jason Knott, who is not, does not get comedy, apparently, says, I'm against you and all that is left of the incel party. Libertarians are the enemy. This is one more proof of you violating your ethos and grandstanding for attention at others' expense. LOL. LOL. Jesus, guys. Lay off the weed. My taxes automatically come out of my paycheck, says Tom Dallow. I'd report people. The more people who get screwed, maybe more people will wake up. Night gets the darkest before the dawn. Okay, that's hilarious, Tom, but please don't do that. Let's see, what else? Somebody says, WTF, I love the IRS now. Keith Doran says, laugh out loud, so many triggertarians. Thanks a lot, Austin. And my buddy Mackenzie Veith just joined. I hope I pronounced that right, Mackenzie. Don't get triggered. Mackenzie has been enjoying all of the laughing at the thoughterry and the discussion about sex workers. And what's funny is I actually saw Mackenzie this morning posted on her Facebook page. You guys can check her out. She posted some hilarious memes. Aya Katz just popped in and says, is it wrong to report it's wrong to report anyone to the IRS? But Aya, answer this question for me. Is it wrong to report a communist to the IRS? Is it wrong to report someone to the IRS who thinks that we should all be prosecuted by the IRS if we don't pay our taxes? Is it wrong to report, if Bernie Sanders didn't pay his taxes, should he be reported to the IRS? I'm just curious. And I'm just doing this, of course, to play devil's advocate. But anyway, so what was interesting was Mackenzie Veith was posting this morning about how now some of the libertarians are saying this is a perfect example. This is a perfect time for us to try and recruit sex workers to the Libertarian Party. Yeah, because that's exactly what the Libertarian Party needs, is to recruit sex workers and to continue to go harder left than it already is. I'm not saying that there's not a lot of right-wing sex workers. There absolutely are. But the whole point of being a political party is to win elections. And of course, one of the major reasons why people, when they watched the Libertarian Party convention in 2016, was because they saw not the demagoguery, but a lot of the, I guess what the right-wing fascists would call degeneracy, like the naked guy on the stage, right? You have to understand that moving, like winning elections is a popularity contest. So it does seem like a lot of people are actually doing everything they can to make the Libertarian Party as unpopular as possible, right? Not to put on a good face and not to sort of normalize our ideas, which is what most of us want to do. So Aya Katz, she's being consistent. She says yes, it is wrong to report a communist too. Very interesting, very interesting. I think there are some good arguments for why it would be okay to report a communist to the IRS. Like, what if for example, if they're committing other crimes like murder, for example, like, would it be wrong to report Al Capone to the IRS, right? Al Capone was a brutal murderer, and the only way they could get him was on tax evasion charges. So was it wrong to report Al Capone to the IRS? Again, this is just me engaging in what we call, devil's advocate, right? Try and think of things from someone else's point of view in order to make sure that we are being consistent in our beliefs. And let's go ahead and read some more of the triggered comments. Someone says, taxation is theft, but this is hilarious. Absolutely true. Thank you, Steve Tragan Jude on Facebook. Yes, you absolutely get it. Someone says, just because it's immoral doesn't mean it can't be funny. Exactly. Just because it's immoral doesn't mean it can't be funny. And then, of course, let's see. Someone says, oh, this is coming from Mr. Pro Police. I have no idea where they got that. Someone else says, but what, Austin? Seriously, did your adventure into Republican politics strip you of any sense of liberty whatsoever? Because what the actual F? Who the hell are you, and what did you do with Austin? And I had to respond, I didn't defend this. I didn't even write the article. The article, if you could read it, says that it's not actually real. It's just a guy who's trolling, and leftists and lefty libertarians are getting trolled. Right. Right. And then Brett Roberts asked on Facebook. He actually asked a really good question, guys. Brett is doing the yeoman's work of liberty here by asking a very good question. Brett Roberts said, did you find it funny when the IRS started taxing crypto? The answer to that is no. I did not find it funny when the IRS was coming after people who are for crypto, if they own cryptocurrency. And the reason why it's not funny for people who engage in cryptocurrency transactions to get targeted by the IRS, but it is funny when sex workers and this whole chicanery is going on. Why that is funny is, one, because sex is just always a funny topic. Well, number one. Crypto is not funny, ever, in any way, shape, or form. And if I have to explain to you why Bitcoins are not funny and sex can be funny, again, you are in the wrong place, nerds. And two, crypto advocacy community is not advocating for taxes, right? But a lot of these sex workers who come from the left are advocating for taxes. So if you have a Marxist feminist sex worker who's out there advocating for taxes, and then they get reported to the IRS for taxes because they're charging, you know, incels or quote whatever, $15 for nudes on Snapchat, and then they get reported to the IRS, that is funny. You know why? Because again, like I said earlier, irony. Irony. It's not funny for Bitcoin advocates to be reported to the IRS because Bitcoin, one, not funny. Two, they're not advocating for taxes. It is funny for left-wingers and leftists and lefty libertarians or whoever, people who advocate for taxes, right? We'll say Marxists, not lefty libertarians, because at least the lefty libertarians, while they're a bunch of triggered weenies and pseudo-intellectuals, like so many of Marxists, the reason why it's funny is because they're advocating for taxes, some of these Marxists from the left. Right? So when they get reported for taxes, again, shouldn't have to explain this to you. Now it's no longer funny. You've killed the joke. And then Farah Jane says, Austin, but what? There should be no but here. Reporting people to the IRS doesn't suddenly become okay when it's someone who's doing something you personally disapprove of. I never said it was okay. And I'm not sure why you disapprove of sex work in the first place. I never said I disapproved of sex work. You know, it's not an industry that anybody wants their kids to go into. It's not like, hey, I want to raise my kid to be a sex worker. You know, it's not like something where, like, you know, the prostitutes are going to run the world one day, right? You know, it's generally considered a black market industry for a reason. Doesn't mean I think it should be illegal. But she says, I'm not sure why you disapprove of sex work in the first place. The only reason why I would ever disapprove of sex work is because I think it probably hurts people, the people who engage in it, and because they don't have any other options. And I think it's dangerous. And, you know, it could facilitate the spread of disease. I wish people didn't have to seek out sex work or sex workers. But I realize that that's not a decision that I need to be making for other people's bodies. So when I say if I say I disapprove of something, just because I may disapprove of something doesn't mean that I don't think that you should be able to engage in it. Right? Just because I don't glorify something doesn't mean that it's the opposite. That's the problem, again, with the entire United States. This is why our politics are so messed up, and this is why we have a two-party system, is because even libertarians, we all engage in black or white thinking or binary thinking. And if you want to see good examples of this, you need to go through this Facebook comment thread. It's absolutely hilarious. And the memes, if you haven't read the article, you need to read the article too. So anyways, this is why one of the reasons why the Libertarian Party is never going to win an election. Never anything like past a city council, town council seat. Not to say that there aren't many good libertarians in the party. There absolutely are. A lot of good people in the Libertarian Party. But they're outnumbered, and it's getting worse every single day. So thank you so much for listening to the Freedom Report live stream today. I hope you guys enjoyed. And I will close this live stream by reiterating again for the idiots and the people who don't understand comedy, that I do not think you should report sex workers to the IRS. I think it's a dick move. And I think that sex work should be decriminalized. Are you going to pay attention to that, or are you going to ignore it and confirm your biases? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to the Freedom Report podcast. If you guys are not enjoying the Freedom Report podcast, I don't know what to tell you. I've been having a blast. Podcast numbers are flying up. We're getting thousands and thousands of downloads for the show again. I know you guys are enjoying it, and if you do enjoy it, you might not want to share this podcast on your Facebook page. Maybe a little too spicy for some people, but definitely go out and subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, or any of the other podcast services. You know, we're basically on everything. Spotify, you name it, you can find the Freedom Report podcast. If you think that taxation is theft, just like me, and you want to get a cool Make Taxation Theft Again hat, you know, we won't report you for sure, but I do have to pay the taxes when you buy it. Sorry about that, because the federal government is, you know, taxing me, and I have to report all of that income. So check it out at teamliberty.store, and you guys have a wonderful day.